Labour's winter fuel cuts leave pensioners freezing as fury grows. The brutal impact of Labour's winter fuel payment cuts has been exposed in a damning new poll, revealing that millions of pensioners are being forced to choose between heating and eating as temperatures plummet. A survey by trade union Unite has laid bare the stark reality. 2/3 of older people have been left with no choice but to turn down their heating this winter due to Labour's controversial decision to restrict the allowance to only those on pension credit. The findings paint a bleak picture of life for Britain's elderly under Keir Starmer's government. 1 in 4 pensioners reported feeling more depressed, stressed, or anxious, while nearly 1 in 5 said they had fallen ill or seen their health deteriorate as a direct result of the cut. Shockingly, 16 admitted they have been forced to ration hot meals, while more than 1 in 10 are now going hungry. Others are cutting back on basic hygiene, with 1/3 taking fewer baths or showers, and 16 relying on public spaces just to keep warm. Unite's General Secretary, Sharon Graham, did not mince her words, condemning the policy as an attack on Britain's elderly. Our survey shows pensioners are suffering real-life consequences of this needless cut to winter fuel allowance. They are shivering in their own homes, skipping meals, and even avoiding bathing. Retirees should be able to live with dignity after a lifetime of work. Instead of picking the pockets of pensioners, the government should be taxing the wealthiest in society. The poll of over 6,000 pensioners comes as Unite ramps up its fight against the policy. The union is set to stage a high-profile protest in Westminster today, including a dramatic banner drop from Westminster Bridge, as it pushes for Labour to reverse its decision. Legal action has also been launched in a bid to overturn the cuts. The backlash against the policy has been fierce. Charities, opposition parties, unions, and even some Labour MPs have blasted the move, which stripped nearly 10 million pensioners of a previously universal benefit. The Daily Express has joined the chorus of criticism, calling on Chancellor Rachel Reeves to reinstate the payments of up to £300 a year for all pensioners. Labour ministers have attempted to justify the cut by blaming a pest £22 billion financial black hole inherited from the Tories, a claim the Conservatives have fiercely denied. But critics argue that rather than targeting the elderly, the government should be looking elsewhere for savings, including a potential wealth tax on the richest. A government spokesperson defended the policy, insisting they are committed to supporting pensioners through measures such as the Warm Home Discount, the Extended Household Support Fund, and the triple lock on state pensions. The energy industry has also pledged $500 million in support this winter, but for millions of struggling pensioners, the reality is far starker. As temperatures drop, so too does confidence in Labour's commitment to Britain's elderly, leaving many asking why those who have worked hard all their lives are now paying the price for the government's economic decisions.
Well, I might say something here might be a bit controversial to you, but I would say this is a minister and a Secretary of State sidestepping their responsibilities. So you, as a Secretary of State, if you're going to do a commission into something, a report, you set the boundaries, you steer the direction, you set the scope, and you set people off to find you the information. When it comes back to you, you can either say yay or nay, but to say people should be sacked, I would say that is AET Coopers' failings. That is the Secretaries of State and the ministers failing for asking the people who are working for them to go out and find that information. So I think they are actually, as I said, sidestepping responsibility. Let's go back to the old saying. What do they say? A bad workman blames their tools. And I'm afraid Yvette Cooper is that bad workman.
So we've had a report here, Alex, that was commissioned in the wake of the Southport atrocity. It's taken about 5 months to come to fruition, and it's just been rejected. So someone's got to go for it. In any other walk of life, you're running a business. If you set someone a task and they presented it with you after that length of time and it wasn't worth the paper it's written on, they'd have to go. So surely someone's got to go.
Well, in any normal business, they would be sacked. If this was me and my job, I'd be gone But within the first day of that report coming out, my boss would go, what the hell is this? But the reality is, if you look at the rhetoric that's come out of the Prime Minister's mouth, of many other front-bench Labour politicians' mouths, this report matches that. You know, this determination that people who are talking out against two-tier policing is extremist or far-right. These are the sort of things that Keir Starmer believes in. So you can't, you almost can't.
The report.
Well, they have now, because I think they've realised that it's ridiculous.
You can't have a
but the reality is, but Jonathan, my point is, they may be reflecting on their terrible use of language over the last few months, going, actually, maybe we need to tone it down. It was Keir Starmer's own report into the grooming gang failures in the CPS that said this kind of rhetoric got us into this position in the first place. It allowed these thousands or hundreds of girls to be groomed and raped and potentially murdered. So we're going back into that same fashion again with this sort of report. I'm glad to see it's been rejected, but, you know, we've got to have some accountability.
In yet another damning indictment of governance failures, government officials are sidestepping responsibility for critical lapses in information gathering and policing practices. The persistent deflection of accountability threatens the very fabric of effective governance and erodes public trust in institutions meant to safeguard the citizenry. Ministers and secretaries of state, rather than owning the information gathering process, have engaged in a troubling pattern of blame. Instead of assuming leadership in addressing systemic failures, officials have sought scapegoats, further exposing the inefficiencies in a system that demands accountability at the highest levels. Nowhere is this more evident than in the handling of the Southport atrocity, a tragic event that necessitated a thorough review of intelligence and policing structures. A report commissioned in the wake of the incident was ultimately rejected after 5 months, raising critical questions about transparency and responsibility in governmental and security operations. The refusal to engage meaningfully with the findings underscores a worrying trend. Those in power appear more invested in protecting their reputations than in enacting necessary reforms. Adding to the unease is the increasingly divisive rhetoric employed by government leaders. The Prime Minister and key Labour politicians have gone so far as to label critics of what many see as a two-tier policing system as extremists. This move not only stifles legitimate debate, but also suggests an unwillingness to acknowledge and address disparities in law enforcement. By branding dissenters as radicals, officials risk alienating concerned citizens and reinforcing perceptions of an out-of-touch political elite. The consequences of such evasive leadership are dire. Without meaningful accountability, the cycle of failures in policing and intelligence gathering will persist, leaving communities vulnerable and disillusioned. If government officials remain more focused on optics than on substantive reform, the erosion of public trust may become irreversible. As scrutiny intensifies, the question remains: will those in power finally confront their responsibilities, or will they continue to shield themselves from the consequences of their inaction? The public, weary of deflections and half measures, deserves answers, and more importantly, action. Thank you for reading. Don't forget to leave a comment below, like, and subscribe for more updates. Join our Telegram community to stay informed and be part of the discussion.